There will be fire and fury and weeping and gnashing of teeth. Welcome to Armageddon.
Hello and welcome to the show, Colourful Conversations with Mark and Pete. This week, Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark debate War of Words, Donald Trump versus North Korea. Well, China's President Xi Jinping has urged Donald Trump and North Korea to avoid words and actions that worsen tensions. And this is basically down to the fact that we have seen recently extreme pressure from North Korea to push Donald Trump into rhetoric, which suggests that he has come out with more rhetoric, such as fire and fury on the North Korean people. Is this right? China seems worried. I seem worried. So too does Clergyman Pete. So Clergyman Pete, what's your take on whether we're going to go into Armageddon?
Well, Armageddon, of course, is the big final battle referred to in Revelation. And could this be a final battle? Could this be the big time of tribulation that some people say the Bible points forward to? Unlikely, I think. The reason I think it's unlikely is that we've sort of been here before. The threats from North Korea and then bullish statements from the United States president was something that used to happen. I mean, under Obama, President Obama was... I know he was president for 8 years, but in terms of international affairs, quite often it seemed that he wasn't there. He didn't respond. He would, famously draw a red line and say, "Don't cross that," and then when it was crossed, do nothing. Now, in this case, with North Korea, it is reported that his administration was aware of the miniaturization of the nuclear warheads, such they could fit on missiles. So therefore, it's been around for some time, and he did and said nothing, so they carried on. Now, for these reasons, the reasons that presidents such as Bill Clinton spoke with pretty harsh language and talked about the fact that if they did continue with their nuclear power, nuclear bombs, if that were to actually happen, that they wouldn't have a country left. So he certainly was as bullish as Trump was in what he was saying. What I would just say is that the reaction to Trump in America has been more along the lines of, other presidents have tried to be harsh with North Korea, but Donald Trump says it better.
Well,
and pithier. So if that's the case, is he so pithy that he will actually, at long last, cause North Korea to actually fire a missile? Maybe at Guam, or if they're capable, maybe to mainland America. Maybe it'll take out Disneyland. There's always a silver lining.
Well, a White House statement said the US and China agreed North Korea must stop provocative and escalatory behavior. Now, a statement, ironically, came back from North Korea's official KCNA news agency recently, and saying that the Trump administration had better talk and act properly. Well, is this sense of war of words really something that is just bravado, just politics that perhaps has just escalated to something that's not really actually going to come to anything? But I think, in my opinion, bearing in mind that North Korea is already gearing up and tooling up, as many people will say, perhaps these war of words might go to something slightly more sinister. Now, I'm just going to give you something which might be a little bit more thought-provoking. This is a little thought called War of Words. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. though stones and sticks sometimes ticks and explode into an atomic tree. So when sticks are bones and under stones, those words do hurt, you see. So, is it possible
Yes.
that one stray little word could actually end in Armageddon? So, bearing in mind that what we've seen is that there is this long-standing tension with North Korea, as you've highlighted, Clergyman Pete, but the nuclear program by North Korea has basically increased.
Yes.
And they've already tested 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles in recent times. That's worrying, isn't it? So it wouldn't take much, perhaps, just to push them over the edge. Now, politically, I have a thought on this, which is possibly going to fuel probably some of the problems. But I just wanted to get your sense of where you think North Korea stands in this, and why you think that they're going into these war of words with Donald Trump.
Well, I think the reason that North Korea is having this battle with Donald Trump comes from their history of relationship with America. Because if you think about it, it's the other side of the world to America. What really is the reason that we're reacting to America? Why would that be? Why is it that they're reacting to America when it's on the other side of the world? Or does it really have interest? Well, it's historical after the Korean War. Back after the Second World War, yes, there was another war in Korea.
Yes,
and
in the early 50s.
Yes,
1950.
Yeah, and during that time, there's been a big change in China. In that the communists had taken over, Mao was in the ascendancy, and they had their troops in North Korea. The Americans and Allied troops were in the south of Korea, and they held their place, but they stopped their advance. They could have carried on. The generals at the time thought that they should carry on and push out the Chinese troops, and then there would have been a unified Korea, but they didn't. They stopped. That was President Truman of the US. That was his decision. And he decided to go for a negotiation. And this that decision started it all off. That's why we have a North Korea. Now, just jump forward a few presidents to Bill Clinton. Now that by this time we have the established North Korean habit of the escalation of words, saying doing bomb testing and saying, at that point, saying we're going to develop a nuclear weapon. Now, Bill Clinton at that point said very harsh words about North Korea, as harsh as Trump said, perhaps not with the same flourish, but really saying that he was going to wipe out the country if they carried on. But then he also went for negotiation and ended up paying money into the energy provision for North Korea, providing them with a way of providing energy for their country without developing nuclear power such that it could develop into nuclear weapons. In fact, they took some of their plutonium, I think it was, and managed to develop enough such that they could make a few nuclear warheads. And the United States said this was terrible and really did nothing. You know, a few sanctions, I think, were instigated at that time, but there was no military response. There wasn't a firm enough response because they carried on. And since then, that set the pattern. North Korea pushes and pushes. American leaders say things. North Korea ignores them a little bit. But one thing that North Korea hasn't done, despite during the intervening years, 2 coups in South Korea, they still didn't invade South Korea. No. And so bringing us up to date, what does this mean for this war of words? Well, it seems to me now, I don't know the details or the information that's been given to Trump, but it does seem that Donald Trump is right to be firm in what he says and to speaking language that the leadership in North Korea will get how serious he is. and that North Korea, the North Korean leadership, that family of Kim Jong Il and then his father, they weren't mad because they saw the American military might and didn't invade South Korea, even though, that's basically been their aim since they were set up to unify the peninsula. So it does seem at this stage that the critics of Donald Trump, in this case, we on the Mark and Pete, and I in particular, were critical of Donald Trump for his personal shortcomings, and certainly some areas not fit for presidential duty. But he's in this case does seem to be playing it right. But the problem is, if it's a fine game, if he goes too far, then we could have a few nuclear bombs set off for the first time in a long time.
I'm going to give you my viewpoint on this, and I'm going to take a step back, because if you look back over the last couple of months, I think there's another party that we should be talking about here. So, yes, we're talking about the United States and definitely Donald Trump. Yes, Kim Jong-un and North Korea. Clearly, there is a problem. But for me, what is slightly disturbing is the fact that the United States spent many months trying to convince President Xi Jinping from China to actually put some sanctions on North Korea, or at least some pressure. Now, as we know, that hasn't happened. Why? And that's the thing that slightly is more disturbing for me, because I think one of the key players in this actually is China.
Yes,
because as we know, North Korea relies enormously on China for many reasons, culturally, economically, etc., and a bit of history as well. But the fact of the matter is that China, it's all very well saying, watching Donald Trump and asking him to sort of curb his language, but I would be more inclined to turn the story to China and saying, why aren't you helping here?
Yes.
Clearly Kim Jong-un has decided to tool up, as I mentioned before, for whatever reason. I think it's partly because, again, there is political pressure from his side to show that he's a strong leader, that he potentially has the strength to do more than just simply, dominate the region that he's in at this moment. But the fact is that really this could easily be quashed by China. And I'm just wondering what the game plan here is by China. They're very influential. Economically, they have lots of investment in the United States as well. And they clearly have a lot of influence in Asia. So although clearly we're constantly focusing on the war of words by Kim Jong-un and, of course, Donald Trump, but I would like to sort of open up the discussion and come to the table, President Xi Jinping, and say, where is your role in this? And how is it that this has now been exacerbated, in my opinion, without your intervention? Because I think that really China could have done a lot more. What's your view?
Well, I think, yes, that China is a key player. I mean, Russia was more of a dominant force in the past, and I know that they could have intervened, but of course they were at odds with America, as we know in the past. So that was never going to happen. So you could see either. You could in the past have seen either Russia or China. I think it is the Chinese influence, but also the Japanese and the South Korean influence.
Oh, exactly.
You see, what you could see if they would just play ball is Japan, South Korea, China, and Russia all together taking out North Korea. Sending in either a joint force or a single force, but under the perhaps someone provides air cover.
A military attack as opposed
to military.
Nuclear.
I'm talking a conventional military attack with troops on the ground, go in and take out North Korea on the basis that they are threatening to use nuclear weapons in the region. And now, the United Nations has been quite strict, hasn't it, on supported Trump on this, his view of North Korea, including China and Russia. The Security Council all voted with Trump on this, with his ambassador. So, in that way, he has managed to secure the support of countries, including China. But you still don't see China actually doing anything. Signing up for something is one thing. Actually doing it is another matter. Now, the ideal, I would see, this is an ideal situation. What would we want to happen as opposed to Armageddon?
Ideally, yes.
What would we want? Well, the ideal is for South Korea to step up. Now, South Korea has done very well out of the fact that the US has stayed involved, because basically what they've done is they, under the umbrella of protection of America, have managed to develop their economy with having free trade there. Therefore, typical of capitalists, they make a lot of money. They've made a lot of money, but they don't have to shell out for their own defence. They don't have to develop their own military. Now they should be They should be forced to do that. I thought that was going to be the Donald Trump approach. Maybe it will be long term. I mean, he's dealing with an immediate crisis here.
I'm sure it will come.
He will be expecting them to pay, even if there is a US involvement. Expect him to pay up. I think that's reasonable. But I also think that if you could involve China in putting pressure on, help South Korea to take over, then that would be the ideal situation. So it becomes a unified Korea under South Korean leadership.
That would be very difficult culturally to basically merge the North Koreans with the South Koreans.
It would
take
but
quite some time.
Yes, but it would. But it would be similar, I would argue, with what happened in Germany with the two Germanys merging. Yes,
Which took a long time.
Yes, it took a long time. It was difficult, but in the end, it was worthwhile doing.
Yes.
Now there were other problems in Germany. Now that brought about by Chancellor Merkel's policies, but the merging together isn't one of them anymore. That's not the issue. There were other issues, and so I think that it's certainly possible if done in with support from the countries around. That if Trump manages to negotiate or to be so belligerent that this is the only way that other countries can, as they say, contain Trump, is to do what he said, then his bluster will have worked. If instead everything blows up, then his bluster will have been as mad. It's one of those occasions. Sorry, it's one of those occasions where you'll only. He's been taking a big risk, but a risk that I think needs to be taken. That's my view. But if it works, he'll be a hero, and if it doesn't, he'll be a zero. He'll be a zero. That's the word.
Most of the rest of the world will be zero. Well, because one of the key things is that many experts, humanitarians, throughout the course of history have always said that the very idea of having to resort to pushing a nuclear button, actually not only is the last resort, it's the end. Because basically this whole idea of being able to resort to something like that is the worst possible scenario on all fronts. You've lost all base of negotiation, civilization, integrity, etc. So in terms of predictions, because we like that on the Mark and Pete show, what are we predicting here? What would we, if we had the ear of Donald Trump and we could get him onto the show today, what would we be saying? Is it that our prediction is that he should go in militarily, put pressure on the likes of China to support certainly sanctions, from an economic point of view, but at the same time that we're tooling up through South Korea? Well, what's our prediction in terms of how things will unfold?
Well, let's do so. What prediction? Well, my prediction. I think we'll have two predictions here rather than a Mark and Pete prediction. My prediction is that the war of words will ramp up, and that eventually nothing much will happen. That's what I think. I think that there'll be bluster from Kim Jong-un, there'll be bluster from Trump, and there'll be a back and forth, and it'll gradually peter out. He, I believe, as both Trump and Kim Jong-un can benefit by looking strong, and Trump playing to his base, of course, appears great in this situation. And Kim Jong-un appealing, showing that he's strong, not appealing to his base, but showing that he's strong and tough will scare any opposition that's building up in his country. So I think that they will both benefit from just appearing strong and then backing down. As I said, I don't think Kim Jong-un is mad in that way. doesn't want to be obliterated. If he did, for example, he sent a nuclear weapon. Say he did have a functioning missile which could carry a nuclear warhead to Los Angeles, and he sent it there, and it took out Los Angeles. Within not too long a period of time, North Korea would be sort of like a sheet of glass, wouldn't it? Having melted down. I mean, America would respond then. American military would respond immediately, and that we would say, North Korea, where was that? And it would be a very bad move, and I hope that doesn't happen. So I think, knowing that, there won't be an actual escalation. However, with Trump saying this, I said what I wanted to happen. That's what I think will happen. I think it'll keep on chuntering on, and he'll try the same thing in a few years.
Well, Pyongyang has accused Mr. Trump of driving the Korean Peninsula to the brink of nuclear war.
Yes.
Now, what do you think, listeners? Do you think these war of words will ramp up? Do you think that Kim Jong-un will continue to tool up? Do you think Donald Trump will almost certainly continue with his rhetoric? Most certain that probably will be the case. But let us know your thoughts. Let's hear your war of words. Why not? Log on to www.markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts. Follow us at Mark and Pete on Twitter. So join us again next time for Colourful Conversations with Mark and Pete. That's assuming we haven't reached Armageddon.